This is Mr. Bullring. Um, it was big news. You know, falconry was virtually unknown in the United States back in the early 1900s. There were a few oddballs who did practice it, but Paul Rainey, being the equivalent of a Peyton Manning in terms of newsworthiness, generated a lot of play in the press. And I was lucky I came across this drawing of Rainey. It's the only one we have. So in 1910 he did come over, and obviously the artist met with him in person to get the details so correct there. In 1926, a very wealthy man named Erastus Taft, who had a big estate in Brewster, New York, was one of the officials bringing over English Springer Spaniels for the first time. They were a very popular dog, and there's a man, William Humphrey Sr., you'll see a photograph of him. He bred Springer Spaniels and the Llewellyn setters and pointers. He was a great friend of the British falconer Ronald Stevens. They lived in Shropshire, and so Taft suggested, when he heard that Humphreys were into falconry, that they bring over some of their hawks as well. So Taft came over with his son, who you saw previously. Humphreys came over with his son, who you saw previously, and his daughter. She's age 5 with King George, their favorite Gottsauber. And so they helped to get falconry exposed to the American public, at least here in the Northeast, because not only were they at the field trials on the Taft estate, but they also went to Long Island and New Jersey with their dogs and their hawks. Another man early in falconry history in New York is George Goodwin, who was employed at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. He was the son of a professional falconer in Scotland, and grew up, of course, with hawks all the time. And he kept up the sport out of love for it, and brought his hawks here. He imported a few from England, but most he stole from the Palisades. There's a lady named Rosalie Edge, who is sort of an anti-sporting person, and she wrote a pamphlet about George and his thievery, which I have in my collection. It's kind of funny in a way. She wrote a poem on the back of it that said, hooded and tied, God's law defied. So Rosalie was actually an incredible lady, because she is the one who established Hawk Mountain Sanctuary in Pennsylvania and generated really a good part of the American conservation movement. So, you know, while I object to what she felt about falconry, I applaud her wholeheartedly for what she did for the wild hawks and for conservation. The 3 falcons that you see on the right, George didn't acquire from the Palisades. He got a call one day at the museum from the manager of the Pierre Hotel, saying that a guest was objecting to this nest of peregrine falcons on the balcony of her bedroom. And would he come over and take away the peregrines, and so his guest could rest in peace. The guest turned out to be a lady named Olivia de Havilland. So George said, oh yes, he would take them and they would be just fine. And she, of course, thinking he was going to raise them and release them, but you could see that he only released them when he went out hunting with them. I didn't know if it was true, so I wrote Olivia de Havilland in Paris and got back a lovely letter saying that yes, it was all true, and she's forever grateful for the good night's rest she had while in the city. Another man in the 1930s and 40s who was sort of a guru for falconers in New York was a man named Klotz. I think Alexander Klotz, I think his name was. This is a picture of his son because Alexander never wanted to have pictures taken of him other than those for the family, so he pushed his son in front of the camera. And I did get to talk to his son a bit before he passed away. And a fellow named David Webster in the University of Connecticut was the recipient of all Klotz's papers. So I am going to visit him because there is a lot on falconry there. Klotz was a guru to the people who were coming up in the photos of Westchester County. There was a teenage group of guys who were dedicated falconers who tried to learn it from books. And so Klotz, who had been practicing it and was a good friend of Goodwin's, became their mentor. And these are pictures of a few of the people from Westchester County. This is Eugene Kelly. Larry Zuck was a falconer throughout almost all of his life. Dick Ryan and Artie Donahue were teenagers. I think Dick was 19 and Artie was 17 there. These are their Cooper's Hawks. And these guys, I was talking to Ken Carney, the chief historian of American falconry, about him, and he said he takes his hat off to these guys, these teenagers from Westchester, because at that time, people in Pennsylvania were really pretty much just lure flying their birds. They weren't active hunters, and these guys came along and they didn't know they were supposed to just lure fly their birds. So they were out in the bush every chance they could get, actually hawking and catching game. So Kent says they're amongst the best of that era of falconers. Vern Seifert remained a lifelong falconer. He's 18 years old in this picture. He did hunt other birds than owls. He eventually moved to Alaska, where he maintained falconry until he died, I think, at the age of like 90 or something. I got to know Vern slightly, and just the stories he had were wonderful. This is another picture of Vern. He could have been a movie star. This is a picture of George Goodwin that was in a magazine. And, there aren't too many pictures of George around. There was a nice article on him, and the photographer was showing George lure flying. Larry Zuck, Doc Stabler. Everybody thinks of Doc Stabler as being from Colorado, but he's actually a New Yorker until he got a good job out there. And he was one of the people who I believe solved the problem of Frounce, and came up with Emtrol and other drug regimens to cure Frounce, which killed a lot of birds early on. There's Vern. Vern, along with Heinz Meng and others from New York, would go down to Assateague once it was discovered what a mecca that was for migrating peregrines. And they could catch upwards of 14 or 15 peregrines between them during a day. There's a picture of a Pennsylvania falconer named Corny McFadden, where there are about 12 peregrines on a long pole, and so the guys could pick the best of the lot, and they were all free. This is Larry Zook again. People wonder if we ever go heron hawking with our falcons like they did in the old days in England, and yes, they did. Occasionally, this is Larry with his falcon's first heron. One of the great popularizers of falconry, both in England and the United States, is Captain Knight. He's written half a dozen books that are still readily available. He's quite a character, one of those sort of larger-than-life guys. And he would come over for a couple months, I believe every other year, and on a lecture tour. He would take movies of his hawks. Sometimes they were natural history. Other times they were costume dress-up, like medieval people going out hawking. I've got about a dozen of his movies, so it's kind of fun to see what they were doing back in the 40s and 50s. He had a famous eagle named Mr. Ramshaw, who he brought over, and I don't think that's not Mr. Ramshaw there, that's another one. But Mr. Ramshaw went on a very popular radio show, Fred Allen's radio show, and got away from the captain inside the studio. He's flying around in the rafters, and the laughter you hear as the eagle starts flying around and dive bombing people. It's tremendous. You can, if you want, just go to YouTube and Google Captain Knight, Fred Allen, and you can come up with the actual broadcast. It is pretty hilarious. This picture was taken by Heinz Meng at Professor Allen's house, where Captain Knight stayed whenever he came over and spoke at Cornell. There are a couple movies that he's acting in. He's really just himself. So if you want to get a sense of the man, you can get a hold of one of the movies that he's in and see him with Mr. Ramshaw. These are the two people who are probably most responsible for our falconry club. The long-haired guy on the left is Mr. William Robinson, and then the professor is, of course, Heinz Meng. That hat, as you see back there, doesn't have as many pins on it, but as the years went by, Heinz added more pins, and now Lester Blorvelt sports that. And if you're lucky, maybe he'll wear it tomorrow night at dinner. These are two falconers from Millbrook School, and the one you might not recognize because he's a kid of about 14 there is Bobby Kennedy, and then on the right is Pete Cheney. Both of them kept up falconry ever since they were kids. Pete Cheney was for many years the president of the Peregrine Fund in Boise, Idaho. This is a statue of Bill Robinson in Central Park. And here's a guy who's here tonight. You may find him unrecognizable because he ditched the beard. But again, like a lot of the people that I mentioned from the Westchester Hawking Club, he started young and is still at it.
Who is it?
Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Maybe we should make him go up and stand over.
That's kind of embarrassing.
That's the whole point.
We're all friends. That's right.
Yeah. How old were you then, Tim?
20.
20? Yep.
Now and
I got a haircut.
I'll now turn it over to Mr. Bill Robinson. Since this is our anniversary, 50th anniversary. Bill knows everything there is about the start.
Okay, well, for me, the first memories I have is meeting Heinz Bang back in '64, and I knew him for about 4 years, and in '68, I used to go to his house every weekend, because some falconer from somewhere would be at his house for lunch. People from New Jersey, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, whatever. Anyway, I got to know most of the falconers on the East Coast that way. And I know it was '68 because it was actually right after Bobby's father was assassinated. And I remember us talking about it. And we had a guy there, God, what was his name now? Oh, Barry Kloss. And I remember we were talking about this and falconry and stuff. And Barry was an interesting guy. He made hoods with a beautiful eye-shaped teardrop pattern. And in those days he published it in the NAFA magazine, Hawk Chalk. So there is a record of how he made those. They were all glued hoods in those days. Nobody stitched hoods at all. But like most of the people that I remember from the early days, Barry Kloss was a character. He had a steel plate in his head from a car accident, which didn't help him much. But he also liked to drink. And one of my memories of Barry is on Assateague Island with trapping peregrines. And some people would toss out harness pigeons, you know, and some people would dig into the sand and just have a headset on with reeds and hold a pigeon. And when the falcon came down, they would grab the pigeon. Well, anyway, Barry's trapping. He's heading from north to south, so people are looking at where he's coming from. He's in a car, a Jeep. He let out air from the tires so he would run on the sand. And Barry had been drinking, and his eyes were little red-shaped dots, and he's driving down the beach, throwing out to crows, cormorants, gulls, any bird he sees. And he's going so fast. And in front of him, you'd see people popping out of the sand with these headsets. Rolling in high. All the guys that we got together with for falconry in the beginning, they were all, if they were sitting at this table here, you'd all give the table a wide berth. One of them was Frank Piccari. He was our treasurer. And Tom Cullen, Tom's father, was our first treasurer. But later on it was Piccari. Piccari was a heavy-set guy, had a mustache, and everything he said was stupid. One time a few of us were out looking for goshawk nests in this stand of white pines, and Frank goes, hey, a bobcat up in the tree. So we go over, and sitting there looking at us is a porcupine. And Frank had a professional sign. You ever see those trucks that say "Stay back 500 feet"? Frank had one made up. Oh, there's Frank.
There's Frank.
Yeah, there's Frank. Frank had a sign made up with big letters in the back of his truck. Stay back 500 feet. Live hawk on board.
We need to bring those bumper stickers back.
What else did Frank do? Oh, well, right about the time that you went down to his house. Remember that?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
He lived on Long Island, right by the base of the bridge there.
Yeah. I mean, Frank was a very dedicated falconer, loved his hawks more than his wife. You know, he would love, and he liked to be around people, because he liked to get a pat on the back, you know, for being such a great guy. So he called me up and said, "You've got a red tail, I got a red tail. Let's go hunting." And I said, "Oh, you're welcome to come on up here to Millbrook. We've got plenty of farms. No, you're coming down to Long Island. You got to come down to Long Island. So, so I did. And Frank, of course, very proud of the Muse there. And by the door, by the front door of that Muse, I saw a baseball bat. I said, Frank, you know, what do you have the bat out here for? And Frank could have been an actor on The Sopranos. Frank said, Peter, the neighbor's got cats. And the cats come over and want to eat my bird. But I've got a bat. And the cats don't last too long around my Muse. So I didn't know whether to be shocked or to laugh my butt off. So I said, let's go hawking, you know. But he was, as Bill said, heart and soul dedicated to our club. So even though he had his downside, you know, he had mostly an upside.
Yeah, Italian. And speaking of Italians, his friend was Italian, Tony Berlingeri, who also lived on Long Island. And whereas Frank was a make-believe gangster, Tony really was. He carried a picture of his mugshot in his wallet. And Tony had asthma, and there were times where he could hardly breathe. And he's out flying his bird on Long Island, and the bird flies away. So Frank's jumping across the Long Island Expressway and all those other major roads down there. He finally gets to his bird, and he's breathing real heavy. I thought he was going to die. And he's fluttering a pigeon. His bird's up on a telephone pole. And this little old lady comes out of the house, and she goes, "Sir, what are you doing with that poor pigeon? Leave that poor pigeon alone." And Frank goes, "Lady, it's my fucking pigeon, and I'll do what the fuck I want." And then there was Ed Hepp. A lot of you still remember. He passed away fairly recently. I lived on a farm, and I had a giant barn. One time, Ed's driving up my driveway, and I was hacking out a female golden eagle at that time, and it was sitting on the top of my barn. And Ed comes up the driveway. His car comes to a screeching stop. He hops out, and he goes, "What the hell is that?" Who else would characters, Peter? I got my list.
You know, some of these pictures of our meets, we had a lot of falconers from Pennsylvania come up. Bill McBride was one of the best people you could ever meet. Incredibly helpful to young falconers. Very supportive of the sport. He would go to just about every field meet he could drive to.
Then there was a guy named Dave Green. A lot of you remember the old Andy Griffith show with Barney Fife? Don Knotts? Before Don Knotts did that show, he was on the Steve Allen show doing the skit. He was a regular visitor there. He played, Don Knotts played this nervous guy, you know, answering questions, being interviewed on the street. And this is what Dave Green was exactly like. He was nervous, jittery. I said to him one time, "What do you do for a living?" He goes, "I'm a dentist."
The fellow in the photograph is my beagling buddy, Clayton Bright from Pennsylvania, who's an excellent artist, and he came up and I let him use my red tail at the Belterre field meet, you know, for a hunt. This is a little kestrel named Preacher, and he rescued Preacher from some cats and raised him up, and he called him Preacher because that bird never shut up. Zachary Bristol.
I thought you were done.
Huh?
I thought you were done.
Yeah?
You got more slides?
away.
Yeah?
Yeah, go ahead. Before we started this, Peter said he's not a good public speaker. At first I didn't believe him.
Zach, I don't remember you looking like that.
One time.
Yeah,
That's right.
There you go.
That's me.
yeah.
Look at the hair.
Yeah.
That's sort of the young Clint Eastwood. Bobby Bard had a Harris hawk named Harriet, and it loved Bob, but nobody else, including Bob's wife, and she was scared to death of it. So.
Yeah.
Another picture of Chuck Keene from Sports Afield magazine, I believe. This is one of the great benefactresses of our club, Mary Fornas. When I was president, I got a call from, I don't know, it might have been Chris von Schilgen, stating that there was a vacancy on the Falconry Advisory Board, and the birders were putting forth a guy named Robert Arby from New York City Audubon, who was violently anti-falconry, wrote articles about it everywhere he could. And so Chris suggested this other lady named Mary Fornas, who was a rehabilitator and loved falconers. And she came in representing the birding groups of New York State. On the Falconry Advisory Board back then, you were supposed to have, I believe, 2 representatives from the DEC, a representative falconer, a representative from the birding groups, and a representative from the New York Federation of Hunting Federation. So luckily, we somehow got Mary Furness to be selected, and she was maybe as much help in smoothing the waters between birding groups and the conservationists who said we shouldn't possess birds of prey, and ourselves. So unfortunately she did pass away, but she came to every field meet we had here, all the Falconry Advisory Board meetings, and did us all a world of good.
There it is.
This was our field meet headquarters for about seven or 8 years. This is a sort of Newport-style mansion in the middle of farm fields, not all that far from here in South Courtright. It was built by a copper magnate who was born in South Courtright, went west, made a fortune in mining, and came back and built himself this place. And so it was, when we were there, run by a lady named, and owned by a lady named Kelly House, and Kelly would run a ballet dance school throughout the summer months, and then in fall and winter she would turn it over into a B&B for deer hunters and falconers. And Mark Gilligan, who lived nearby, found it for us, and we had the greatest times there. There were probably only about 35, 40 falconers at the most in our club back then, and you'd probably only get about 30 coming to the field meet, so it was very intimate. Bill, do you want to tell about the first field meet?
No. No. When you're done, I'm gonna go back to 68.
Well, here, then why don't you leap in and do that?
Are you done?
Yeah?
No, the point is, there was falconry here in New York State in the 60s. And the way it was done was you were able to get a scientific license for a bird of prey. And most of the people that we knew that were really interested in birds of prey had that type of license. And then the next step, actually hunting with them, it was just a matter of going on private land with someone you knew, and nobody was going to see you or catch you anyway. So that was the state of falconry. The chances of us legalizing it in this state seem pretty rare at that time. But in 24 hours, I could easily have 12 people assemble at my house and have a meeting. You know, it was, everyone knew each other, everything was new to us, and even though they were all characters, it was just such a great feeling. I remember one time I was sitting on my porch, a whole bunch of us, and I had homing pigeons at that time. And this homing pigeon came racing around the porch, right in front of us, eye level. And right behind him was an adult goshawk. Boy, that was memorable. But our first steps in getting falconry legalized in the state was with the help of a physician over in Castleton-on-Hudson, on the other side of the Hudson River. His name was Doc Skiff. His father was the deputy commissioner of the DEC, and he knew legislators and were friends with them. And Doc Skiff got Heinz Mang and I together, and we went up to see one of these legislators and to draw up legislation to put in front of the state legislature for passage. Well, we did that, and I don't know this for sure, but this is what I was told by Doc Skiff. When the legislation for the falconry law came up, it was already down. We had lots of enemies back then. We had Audubon, they didn't like us at all. DEC certainly didn't like us at all. And when it was voted down and all the opposition left, Doc Skiff's friends brought it up for another vote and it came through. So that was more reason for the DEC not to like us. So we had a hard time. We were constantly being harassed or pestered by DEC officials. At one point, I had a banding license. I remember I was trying to band a red tail with a harness pigeon, and I tossed it out, and the line of the pigeon got caught over a telephone wire. So the pigeon's dangling back and forth, and I'm trying to get it down. And a couple who lived in a farmhouse, they come out, and they're all upset about it. They called it the DEC, and the DEC came, and I said, "See that hawk sitting there? I was trying to catch him." And I banned hawks for the Fish and Wildlife Service. And within about 2 weeks, I got a notice from the DEC and the feds that all my licenses had been canceled for impersonating a federal agent. Yeah, and so I filed an Article 78 in the state Supreme Court against the DEC, which I won. And since then, a lot of people, including people in the DEC now don't know this, the result of that lawsuit was that the DEC has to, by law, hold a departmental hearing on anyone that they're attempting to take a license from. Whether they're not going to renew it or they're going to suspend it on the spot. I know Rick West just got a letter from Mary from the DEC saying that if he didn't breed goshawks by next year, not goshawks, falcons, they were going to take his license away. Which is like saying if you don't get a buck this year, you're not going to get a hunting license next year. You know? It just doesn't make any sense at all. Perfect thing for Article 78 for arbitrary and capricious action. And I think Mary knows that you can't do that unless you go to a hearing about the issue, and then the public can come to these hearings too and testify. So anyway, we finally got the law through, and now I gotta see what I saw. But before we actually got the law through, I was called up by, I think it was the New York State Conservation Council or Sportsmen's Association of New York State or something. They wanted me to do a speech about falconry. This was before the law went through. So I called up Peter and another friend of ours, Carl Gutline, who's no longer with us. And we drove up to this meeting where I was going to give a talk. And it was September 15th. I know that exactly because it was my birthday. And I was pulled over by a state trooper for speeding. And I told him my speedometer was broken, which it really was. And then I said, and it's also my birthday. And he said, "Oh, just wait here a minute." He comes back and he sticks the ticket through the window and hands it to me. He goes, "Happy birthday." But, Peter, tell him what happened at that meeting.
The meeting was definitely to try and get permission for falconers to hunt pheasant. Pheasants were a big deal back then because New York State was threatening to stop breeding and releasing pheasants, which they'd done for several decades. The Conservation Department guy said, well, if you can get the Conservation Council, which is a coalition of all the sportsmen's clubs in the state, to agree to let falconers hunt pheasants, we'll put it in for you. So we went up there. Bill gave the main speech because he's the better speaker, and then I followed, with sort of statistics that one shooter could take more pheasants under his bag limit in a season than all the falconers in New York State could take in a year. So they actually voted there to let us hunt the pheasant with our hawks, which was a huge deal for us. They voted it unanimously, so the DEC, who had representatives there, saw for sure that we could hunt pheasant. And so after the talk broke up, after the meeting broke up, Bill and I and was it Carl or Bud?
Carl Gutwein.
Carl Gutwein, yeah. We were standing around talking, congratulating each other on getting pheasants for our club. And this guy comes up and he says, I really liked what you had to say. You seem to have a lot of problems with the Conservation Department. What's going on? So Bill and I both proceeded to run down the Conservation Department because back then they were doing everything they could to hinder us, not help us. There was an attitude, especially in law enforcement, that all falconers were criminals. And it really was their mindset. So we're talking to this guy about how we hate the DEC and what they're doing. And he said, well, I understand this, so I'm going to look into it. By the way, my name is Ken Wick, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the DEC. so we immediately thought we'd killed the whole sport for everybody in the state. But what happened was incredible. I think it was about a month later, the club had a meeting. We met with the administrators of the falconry program on an annual basis, or when needed. So there are about 25 falconers sitting in the audience, and I had an agenda. We need this to make the sport better for ourselves and for our hawks. And at every point that I raised, Keith Mickle, who was the head of the falconry program in small mammal biology, said, we'll take that under advisement. And this guy in the back of the room stood up and said, why? That sounds reasonable to me. It was Ken Wick. The deputy commissioner came to our meeting. After about 4 times of having Keith Mickle say, Eugene McCaffrey say no to what I was proposing, the whole board of the wildlife administrators, which included law enforcement, shut up after everything I said. And about 2 weeks later, administration of the falconry program was transferred from small game biologists to special licenses. And from then on, with guys like Chris von Schilgen, and who was Chris's boss?
Pat Martin.
What?
Pat Martin.
Yeah, Pat Martin. Under Pat Martin and Chris, the program just took off, and we went from having probably the worst falconry program administration in this country to one of the very, very best. So it pays to tell the truth, even to guys that you might piss off.
The New York State Falconry Advisory Board was actually the wording that's in the law demanded the DEC form that organization, that that board. And they didn't do it for years. So at one falconry meet, I said, I'm prepared to do another Article 78 and sue them in the state Supreme Court. And it turns out they knew I meant business because I'd already done it before. And all of a sudden, I get this letter from Commissioner Henry Diamond asking me to be on the first Falconry Advisory Board. And there were other ones. Heinz Spang was on it, Tom Cade, Jim Weaver, and there was a representative from the New York State Sportsmen's Clubs, which was a good idea because we didn't want to do anything to piss the other sportsmen off at all, as far as seasons go and stuff like that. Yeah, so how long did it take before the law was passed and it was actually implemented?
It took 5 years.
A long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which really was a suable offense and a fireable offense because the legislature had signed the falconry or voted the falconry law into effect.
Right.
The governor had signed it, and so there was no reason for them to take 5 years because they did have federal guidelines to work with right from the very start.
Yeah. And for the system to work as it is now, you needed master falconers to begin with, and there were none because nobody had a falconry license. So the DEC hired this fellow from Virginia to come up. I knew who he was then, but I forgot his name now. But he went around. He came to my house, and we had a nice talk about falconry while the DEC officer just sat there. So I got my master's falconry license without any facilities check really, or taking a test or any amount of time, because you needed a couple of masters to sponsor people to get the ball rolling. So that was sort of nice. And yeah, after that, what else happened, Peter? Oh, yeah, in 1980. What?
The feds raid.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was Operation Falcon. Yeah, that was later on. But before that, I opened up a falconry school at Frost Valley, New York. It's thousands of acres, and they have a big castle up there. And that was in 1980 and 81. And in 1980, the first falconry school I ran for a week up there was a woman in there named Dorothy Thumb. Dorothy Thumb was an undercover DEC agent.
Oh, God.
And after she left my school, and she used the contacts she got through me in that school to go out and get dirt on people. And she wrote me up 5 violations. And believe me, I'm no angel, but it was stuff I didn't do at all. It was made up stuff. And the district attorney for Ulster County called me up. He said, listen, I'm willing to drop all of these cases if you'll just sign a statement saying you'll never break the law again. So I said, I'm not doing that. So in the Kingston Freeman the next day, you know what the article was? Robinson refuses to sign a statement saying he won't break the law again. Made me sound like I was going to keep breaking the law. You know? So, first case, there were 5. First case, I had a whole bunch of falconers. It was held in Catskill, New York, and Heinz Spang testified, and it was about me taking a broadwing out of a nest. And when I got to the ground, I said, this bird is weak, he's sick, I'm going to rehabilitate him and let him go. And Heinz Spang testified at my trial that very often happens in bird nests. The DEC officer, Dorothy Thumb, even testified that I said that at the time. And still the judge found me guilty. So, of taking this broadwing hawk without authorization. Like I really wanted to fly a broadwing. And so, I took that to the state Supreme Court. And I won. And then I went back to the district attorney and I said, I can't afford to do this anymore. It was costing me a fortune. I had 4 more cases I had to try. So he finally just said, these guys are ridiculous. Listen, I'll just drop all the other charges against you, which he did. But the next year, when I advertised my falconry school in the newspapers and state publications, I put attended by New York State DEC. that's how good I am. That's how you do it. All these people were crazy. They were all characters. There was very little falconry going on as we know it today. Hunting. Even Heinz was not a hunter. He lure flew his birds every day that he could, but today there's so much more good things going on. And I asked Kate if maybe she'd come up and just. Kate, come on up here. Are you nervous about talking in front of people? Like,
I don't know what
what are you gonna say?
I'm not nervous about it, I just don't know what y'all want me to talk
All right,
about.
well, I want to give you an example of how far we've come. Back in the day, a lot of people out west that sort of shunned New York State falconers. We weren't that good with it. And I always said, listen, if you can catch game in New York State, you can catch game anywhere. And to show you how good we've got, not we, Kate's got. All I want Kate to do is, without thinking you're bragging, I actually wanted you to tell the story of what happened at the NAFA meet this year.
So this year at the NAFA meet in Enid, Oklahoma, was my second NAFA meet. I'm a second-year apprentice. I have been, it's not bragging, I've been blessed beyond belief throughout my entire apprenticeship. I had the most amazing first year, last year in Kansas. Left there with people saying, you know, how's it feel to have peaked at your first NAFA meet? And I did really well again my second year. So Alicia was with me, Roy was with me. Got the first head of game of the meet. Ended the week with 3 rabbits, 2 fox squirrels. Won the top apprentice prize. I got to meet Gary Brewer, won his book. If you've never been to the NAFA meet, you have to go. It's just like the greatest thing ever. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can talk forever about my apprenticeship.
What you caught at the NAFA meet.
Well, we got 3 rabbits. So we got a rabbit.
Was it the first game
day,
taken?
First head of game at the, yeah, we got a rabbit the first day, first head of game of the meet. Second day, a fox squirrel. Third day, another fox squirrel, that was with you. Wednesday, gosh, by Wednesday it was hot. We were like this, I got to hunt with Matt Mullinex that day. We were like the third to actually fly and hunt. We didn't get any game that day, but she did amazing. I mean, I couldn't have been more proud of my bird that day. Then Thursday got another rabbit, Friday got another rabbit. Yeah, it was a great week, so.
Bad week, huh?
What's that? I have been blessed beyond belief with a great sponsors of sorts, all of the people that I have met in falconry, and a wonderful first bird, and yeah, so.
And getting ready for this meet
And
here.
meeting you and
Oh, yeah.
you and having y'all do this has been wonderful.
And you got
so
to meet
thank you for
Lester.
this.
Lester.
I got to meet Lester, I know.
So, Kate and I were talking, I was going through my attic, and I found a drawing I did of a red tail, and it was charcoal drawing, and I did it back in 1975, the exact year the meet was formed. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, I read an article in NAFA back in 74 or 75, and it said, in the Hawk Chalk, and it just said, if you want to form a state club, just do it. You don't have to know anything or do anything legal, just do it. So I did it. And the first issue of Muse News was me with a magic marker
I
and a
saw the
typewriter.
picture of it.
Yeah, well, it's right there on the table.
Oh,
That
okay,
green cover.
cool.
It's the
I
first-
noticed the picture of it.
First
on the
Muse
slideshow.
News, yeah. Very, very primitive. And I was very pleased because I never liked the name Hawk Chalk for the NAFA thing. I said, Hawk Chalk. And then it just popped into my head. Hey, we'll call it Muse News. And it's been that way ever since. Anyway, I had this drawing I did of a red tail, and I was telling Kate about it. And I sent her a picture of it. And she actually said she liked it. and wanted
I
it.
did.
So I have it right here for Kate. Very cool. There you go. Take it home.
Thank you. You make me cry. Thank you. So sweet.
That's it for us.
All right.
You got something else to say?
Oh, yeah, we got, you're standing away. The photograph is the result of one of the most brilliant moves that Bill made as president. At our first field meet, we looked out the windows and we saw these guys in black suits running around our cars, writing down our license plate numbers. So we, Bill, with all of us following along behind him, went out and asked them what the heck they were doing. And it turns out they were law enforcement, headed by, at the event there by George Tiedemann, whose photograph you can see at the top center. And they were writing down our license so they could go and check to see who we were and what criminal activities
Fish
we
and
were up to.
Wildlife Service was there, Tom Seaver.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was writing down everybody's license plate number.
Yep. And so we were all mad, and we were getting ready, talking, we've got to sue him, we've got to file lawsuits against him. And Bill said, no, what we're going to do next year is invite them to come as our guests to the field meet, And it proved to be one of the best moves, as I said, that Bill made for us, because it turned us from enemies and into friends. And so here you see George Tiedemann and Keith Mickle coming to our field meet at our invitation and banding birds for us there. And so that helped greatly in smoothing the relations for us with the DEC. So we have Bill to thank for that great tactic.
Notice there's snow on the ground. Well, with you at South Cartwright, this happened where we were infiltrated. There was snow on the ground, and everyone had boots on, except these like 5 guys who had black leather shiny shoes on. I just walked up to them and I asked them, "Are you with the DEC?" They said, "Yeah." Blew their cover.
Tom Cullen was a charter member of the club, and Peggy was too, his wife. There's Frank again. He got his picture in the Daily News and called up everybody to go out and buy a copy.
By the way, Frank was the treasurer for years, and he got the charter for the club and stuff. And at some point, he was voted out as being treasurer, and someone else was voted in. And Frank was horribly upset. And in fact, that's why you went to his house, Peter, right? You went at one time to get the charter?
Yeah.
Baseball.
Yeah, so the baseball.
Get the seal.
Yeah. Well, Frank was so down, and he was such a nice guy. I felt so sorry for him. I actually wrote an article for the News called Spotlight on Frank Picari. And right after that, he died. And his wife called me up and told me she brought him that article in the hospital, and he read it, and he just cried. He was so happy that he got this official attention. And next thing I knew, miraculously, I was on the life membership list for the state club here. So Frank put me on because he was so appreciative of that article and paid for it.
I thought he was strictly casual man.
So I think 7 days the first time I went down there.
Oh, I had one story I forgot. You want to say something, Peter?
No.
Okay.
I'm going to
In
incriminate.
1979, New York Times came to my house, and they did a cover story on the ancient sport of falconry. It lives again in New York State. And there was a picture of me holding my goshawk. The guy went out hunting with me, the author of this article. And I could never believe how influential the New York Times was. That next week I had calls from all these radio and TV stations. I had publishers calling me up wanting to write a book, etc. And one of the people who saw this article and my picture in there was a girl named Marty Capps, who lived in New Jersey. And she thought falconry was so romantic. And she heard I was going to be doing a program at the Renaissance Festival in Sterling Forest. And she drove up, that was the following year, and she met me and talked to me. And I married her.
Wow.
So, that's the name of that story.
So romantic.
Yeah, I thought so.
So if somebody getting married, they should talk to you first.
Oh, that's Harry the Harris Hawk. That was another big thing. That was New York Times article too. I let Heinz Mang, a perfectly trained Harris Hawk, excellent bird, to use in a New York City opera. And the DEC, there was a certain point in the opera where it required a hawk flying across the stage. So this bird could do that in a second, no problem. So Heinz did the opera for a couple days, and then the DEC raided the opera and confiscated my hawk. And it made article after article in the New York Times. They finally just gave it back to me. But that was a good one too. Peter, we can't hear you.
I'm just looking through these.
Let's say Mancini had such a selection of birds, always the lanterns and
Yep.
golden eagle.
There's a bill in front of the notorious Dorothy Thumb secret agent castle.
I would bring that tawny eagle up to the top of that castle and fly it to somebody right in the middle of the field there. It's really great.
Yeah. For quite a few years I did rehab work, and so I was on the list for people in Dutchess and Putnam County to call if they needed a hawk or owl picked up. And I got this call. I used to get calls, I've got this red-tailed hawk, and it turned out to be like a pigeon or something. And one day I got a call from the Putnam County dump, and they said, I've got an eagle here. Can you come down and get it? And so I thought, oh, sure, yeah, an eagle, So I said, yeah, I'll come down. And I get down, and there's this sort of 5 by 5 by 6 cage covered with a blanket. And the guy said, I've got this eagle here, I hope you can take him home and fix him up. So he whips off the sheet that was covering the thing, and I nearly had a heart attack because there was a tawny eagle sitting in there, a wild tawny eagle. So I asked the guy, how did you get the eagle into that cage? And he said, well, I was at the deli for lunch, and the ham sandwich I bought was so full of ham that I just kept throwing pieces down on the ground, and the eagle just walked right in there. So I knew there was only one guy at the time in New York State who had a tawny eagle, and that was Mr. Bill Robinson. So I called him up and said, hey, are you missing something? And he sort of knew what I was getting at. I said, yeah. So after a day or two's freedom from one of Bill's lectures, You know, the bird was forcibly repossessed by Bill Robinson. John Baumlin's painted this painting of my red tail for me. He's a superb artist. If you don't know him, he's on Facebook and you can see a lot of his artwork. He's just one of the best. And this probably is the only painting of a red tail where you don't ever see a red tail. So. There were also meets on Long Island. The Long Island guys wanted to form a little club down there, so they got together and stayed a part of New York State Club. Of course, they didn't try and divorce us, but they would have meets from time to time. And the nice thing about rabbits down there is the soil is so sandy, they don't have burrows. But our hunt country in Millbrook is a lot prettier than hunting in subdivisions. Yeah.
Yeah, Jim Vanilla, he's a Long Island guy.
Yeah. Yeah, Jim, I believe, is the man who just donated his entire falconry library to the club.
John King.
Yeah.
Peter Center.
What? Okay. So I don't know if anybody has any questions for Bill and I. We're happy to answer them now or later. Okay, well, thanks for...
Hold on. When, I got a question for y'all. With all of the snow in these pictures, it does beg the question, what time of the year, what month, what day did you usually hold the meet way back in the day?
I think probably...
After
early-
deer season.
No, I think it was beginning of November.
It was probably early November.
Yeah, November.
Yeah. Before deer
Because
season.
we didn't want to run
Really
into,
didn't go
we didn't want to run into Thanksgiving and
Right.
Christmas
Oh, yeah.
holidays and all that.
It's like the first
Uh,
weekend of November, I think.
Yeah, but we had 2 years where there was snow. Most of the time, we really didn't have much, if any, at all.
Right.
You just kept the pictures with the snow because they look nice.
Yeah, my first meet there was in '79. That was my first year there in Belterre. Because I was an apprentice.
Yeah.
I had a question. You had shown a picture of Bobby Kennedy earlier. Didn't he write the first regulations?
Did what?
The falconry, Bobby Kennedy, didn't he write
No.
them?
Not the first.
Or 1972, he had some involvement in there with the regulations.
No.
Check.
He would show up at the meets, but he was a really young guy back then.
Yeah, Bobby was very helpful in a couple respects. One was some new law that was put through. I think Paul might have been involved with that too, but this is a picture of all of you with the governor.
Oh, that was, that law enabled, the original law, not a regulation, the law said in New York State, in order to get it through anywhere, we had to forbid the flying and possession of golden eagles and peregrine falcons. Peregrines were very highly endangered during that period of time. So, in order to get out of the law, it's a big deal. It's not like changing the regulation. And Bobby spearheaded that with Governor Mario Cuomo, and we all had our picture taken in the governor's office with him signing legislation that allowed us to keep peregrines. That's what that was about, to my recollection.
Yeah, I think also Bobby was incredibly helpful in getting falconry passed in Connecticut. The Connecticut falconers had been trying to get a falconry law through the legislature and signed by the governor for about 20 years. And they kept getting turned down. There was one guy that would show up at every hearing dressed as an eagle and, handing out leaflets saying, sorry, we don't want falconry here. But it turned out that one of my best friends, Pat Redmond, who lived in Connecticut and was very much a John and Frank Craighead amateur naturalist, was next door neighbor and very good friends with Senator Del Eads of the Connecticut legislature. So we went and talked to her, and basically what Del Eads wanted would go through. So we did have to have a hearing, and Bobby Kennedy flew in from a speaking engagement in California on his own dime, drove to the hearing and spoke for about half an hour. And back then, unlike now, Bobby was very well thought of, and people listened to him, and he was very knowledgeable, excellent speaker, and he swayed a lot of the people in the DEC and the board and their DEC and in the Connecticut legislature to legalize falconry. So he's a good part of why the Connecticut guys have falconry, even though they've got the worst falconry rates in the country. They do have falconry.
Did you meet him?
Who?
Did you meet Bobby Kennedy?
He's actually a very good friend.
Oh, good.
Bobby Kennedy's the past president of the York State Falconry Association.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Great job, guys.